Morning. So I feel like after watching Jas from the Red Arrows that this might not be quite as exciting. I haven't got any flashy graphics to show, but I can go up and down the room like this a bit later on if you so wish. We're going to be talking about, from an energy perspective, what's actually happening and how it affects you in the FM market and how we see the particular trends going and what can be done to mitigate some of those risks that you might be facing going forward. In terms of what we've got a period really of quite a lot of instability. We've had a recent government change. There's been a lot of changes to the support structures for green initiatives and green subsidies, which are going to affect a lot of your businesses. Maybe not you directly, but certainly the core business of your internal clients or your external clients that you may be working with. And there needs to be some focus now on how we can deal with that, as both as an organisational level, but also as an industry as well. The big question really is, what are you going to be doing with your energy strategy going forward? And we hope to I hope to address some of those points over the next 30 minutes or so. It's in a state of flux. I don't know if any of you here are responsible for buying energy for your own organisations as well. If you are, you'll probably realise that gas in particular has hit a five-year low at the moment. Electricity, although the core price of the energy element has remained fairly stable recently and dropped slightly, the non-commodity element of the electricity pricing has actually increased. So things like your triads, your distribution charges, and you will see those going up over the coming years as well, without a doubt. That's on an upward trend, even if the core commodity price remains fairly stable for the foreseeable future anyway. So that price uncertainty is causing a lot of organisations to back off from any investment in their energy infrastructure, especially if it's a long-term capital investment, which may have a payback of 3, 5, 7, even 10 years. Rightly so, they're looking at their core business and how they address that. So any capital they've got to spend would be invested in that core business and supporting that. But obviously this does roll on to what you're doing in the FM sector as well, because you've got to make sure that that client, whether it's an internal or external client, is benefiting from everything that the energy sphere has to offer and what it delivers to an organisation. You may have seen press recently, National Grid have been saying there could be blackouts and power cuts. We certainly don't believe that's going to happen in the foreseeable future, but it's just a little bit of an indication. It's a wake-up call really, that the way we use the energy, all of us, and the strains on the grid infrastructure could have some detrimental effects on businesses going forward. I don't think we're going to be entering into that blackout scenario for one instant, but what you will find is fluctuations in the frequencies that are delivered to buildings. Now, if you've got sensitive production facilities, that could cause something to lock out that needs restarting. Some process will need to stop and restart, which could cost an organisation a considerable amount of money in some circumstances, depending on what they're doing. So there are mitigators for that. In terms of FM, obviously the way we view it, in terms of what you're doing, you're there to support, you're there to offer the best value, you're there to deliver customer satisfaction, that's internal and external clients, and you're looking at making sure the organisation's capital investment, i.e. the buildings and the infrastructure, is looked after. And you're looking also to turn items of cost into items of added value. And that's certainly something you can do when you look at what can be done in terms of managing energy and managing energy infrastructure and assets within an organisation or within a particular building. The things we're looking for here really is a healthy and productive working environment. So that goes without saying. I think it was mentioned at some of the earlier talks this morning that if the people working inside an environment, the building, are happy and content, they're more productive. So that's adding to the customer satisfaction, and it's also adding value if people working inside an organisation are working more productively. A healthy building, now that really relates to the heating, the cooling, the ventilating. You need all those things operating at an optimum level to ensure that the building fabric is maintained, and you don't have costly repairs to do. And again, that all feeds into what you're doing with your energy. Reducing CO2, now that could be in support of the core business ambitions in terms of CSR, so corporate and social responsibility. They may have targets that they've issued out in the public arena saying they plan to reduce CO2 or take various environmental measures over the coming years. But they also may have financial drivers. Now, I don't know if any of you are involved in things like the climate change agreements, climate change levies, or emission trading schemes. Certainly if you're large energy users or your organisations are large energy users, you will either benefit or you'll suffer from those financial mechanisms that are in place there. So again, they can be reduced. You can add value and reduce costs by ensuring that that's managed correctly. Energy security does become, or is becoming, a far more important issue in buildings and operations. We're finding that not just energy security, and I'm not talking about blackouts, but also cost security as well, moving forward. You know, if you're just going on short-term contracts, or your organisation is, your energy buyers are, you need to understand how that's going to affect your business and where those costs roll in to the organisation's profit and loss account. How do you do that? If we look at it from an energy perspective, from our view, it's very much looking at low zero carbon technologies. You're looking at your lighting, your heating, cooling, power, making sure you're controlling what you use correctly, and looking at your energy assets. So that's anything that you might have installed in buildings, whether they're CHPs, boilers, biomass boilers, ground source heat pumps, and looking at ways to monetize that asset, and standby generation. I take it some of you are dealing with organisations or your own companies that have got gensets sitting there at the moment in standby, or not. It's most organisations, large ones, will have, especially if it's business critical. Usually they sit there and they just run in terms of making sure they operate. But that is an asset that actually has a lot of value attached to it. We can help release that value for you, or you can release it yourself. And of course the other thing to look at is how, and if you're able to, self-generate. If you can generate on site, you add security to price and reliability of supply, and you will reduce your carbon without a doubt and reduce your energy costs. Our strategy, even though the market around energy with government policy, energy policy can be quite complex, is relatively simple. It's use less energy, which goes without saying, I hope. Everyone tries to, but it can be quite low on people's agenda when you're looking at core business activities. What you do use, try and control more effectively, and there's certainly methods to do that. If you can generate on site, you need to explore that. That can certainly add value to your business and reduce your costs quite substantially. And look at your assets, see if you can monetize those. There's embedded value there that you need to be able to release. And if you want to do all those things, you may want to do it yourself, or you may want to let someone else do that for you. It all depends on your organisation and what you're looking at. But again, that's something that we can do, or we can assist you with, or we can assist you doing yourselves. We're quite open with that. We're there to assist and help. So to implement that, we first need to look at how we do it and the strategy around looking at your energy, how we make it work more effectively for you, and also making sure it's more secure going forward. 2 stages. Firstly, you need to determine how much energy can actually be saved by looking at demand reduction. So that'll be looking at the controls, lighting, motors, making sure everything's compliant in there and up to date. Behavioural change as well. It's a big thing that a lot of organisations pay lip service to, but don't always do, and that can make a big difference to energy costs. Secondly, is to determine how much energy can be generated on site. Sometimes it can't, that we'd close that avenue off fairly quickly, but in a lot of cases it can be. And those assets, once we model it and they're installed, can actually show quite a considerable saving in your running costs, and also add to your revenue, or your partner organisation or your client's revenue. Out of that analysis, we'll be able to tell what the potential energy, CO2, revenue savings are going to be, and it will also throw out what the net benefits are. Because a lot of people, if they're looking at an investment, Most organisations we talk to initially have a hurdle of payback of somewhere between maybe 1 and 2 years. 18 months seems to be fairly typical on energy investment. So it's LED lighting, it's controls, it's the low-hanging fruit that people tend to go for. The bigger wins, though, are far more capital intensive. And sometimes organisations, for whatever reason, don't want to invest that capital, or they haven't got the capital available. And again, that's something that we can help out with. In terms of once we've got those ideas of what's going on, we run it through a very simple model. And you can, unfortunately, it doesn't throw up on my screen, but if you can see that, it's a base case model tool that we use. We'll go in, we'll talk to the clients, we'll understand how they use their energy and what they use it on, and that will give us a base case. So in this case, it's 20,000 megawatt hours of electricity and 35 megawatt hours of gas per year. We then look at the first stage and how there we go, it'll go one way, that's it. And what savings could be made by demand management. Now this is an actual case study that we've done with a client at a first stage, just to give us an indication of whether it's worth exploring that any further. At this stage, if it shows up no savings and no benefits, then at least the client knows where they stand and what other areas they may want to focus on. But in this case, with this particular client, it showed a reduction both in their electricity and their gas consumption over their base case model, and that was just by using demand management. And we funded this. This is with E.ON funding, so we funded all the energy measures that needed to be implemented here. After they were all funded and the costs were taken out and we reclaimed our bit, it showed a saving to the client. So with no capital investment from the client side, it shows them an immediate energy saving in year one, and in red you'll see the cumulative saving over a 15-year period. If we then move on to the savings, if we go to installing on-site generation, which in this client, again, we've proposed, the savings potential is a lot greater. And again, the savings we're showing there are after we've actually funded it. So that's no capital funding from the client at all. And we find that this is a way of people accelerating their energy ambitions, because a lot of the time you want to do these things, you know they need doing, but you can't do it. We can actually come in, bring funding to it, our own funding, and make it happen and accelerate it. And it has to make good business sense to both organisations, us and our client organisations as well. Our approach in that is to obviously, first of all, come in and look what your assets are like, what your drivers are, understand what you want to achieve, how you want to achieve it, the interactions and the various vagaries that you get within various organisations and different organisations, and really drill down on that, and then come up with an asset enhancement priority list for the short, medium and long term, and actually put costs and benefits against those. So we go through a process of analyse, optimise and invest. So to analyse, we obviously need to understand how your energy is used at the moment. We do a deep dive on that with you as clients, and look at everything that uses energy, lighting, power, your HVAC, your pumps, your meters. Once we've got that analysis, we can then identify what savings can be made, and we guarantee these savings. There's no point in moving this forward if it's just purely from a carbon point of view, if it doesn't make business sense for you as well. So we understand that it's got to make business sense to us and to the client as well. Once we've done that, we can look at optimising what you have got. And if you've got existing assets, standby generators, CHPs on site, whatever that might be, we can then aggregate those and trade the outputs in the marketplace for you on your behalf or your client's behalf. So rather than the asset just sitting there doing nothing, we can actually sweat it and make it work for you financially as well as environmentally as well. And then we look to invest. Now, our model is based on E.ON money being invested with clients. It doesn't have to be. If you want to invest and you just want us there to help you guide through a process or this particular process, we can. What you get at the moment, if the client manages it, is the one on the left-hand side. So the client takes all the revenue benefit, but the client also takes all the risk. And as that time progresses, that risk increases. The equipment's getting older. You might need to replace boilers, CHP, ground source heat pumps. You might have a sinking fund that you need to pay into to allow for that change. If you can move that risk to someone else and still have the revenue benefits, question I'd ask is why wouldn't you do that? What we do on our model is we can take responsibility and take over the entire asset. So that's buying an existing asset. We maybe run it for a year and then replace it because it's in our benefit to do that in somebody else's other organisation's site or property. Or we can do a JV where we have part ownership. That can be cut many different ways. But what it does do is our model has to show an increased revenue benefit for the client side by us doing that. Otherwise, why would you do it? And a reduced risk for you as well. So you're actually passing the risk across to us to manage that asset for you. The upside advantages for you is security of supply, so it goes without saying. Funding, if that is a problem for an organisation, we'll bring our CapEx to it. So you can accelerate anything that a client needs to do or you need to do in the energy infrastructure side by working with someone like us. You know, there are other brands available, I'll point that out, apart from E.ON, but we're one of the few that have been doing this for a number of years now. Reduction in costs, that's got to be shown, and CO2. We've also got the potential to make it off balance sheet. Now, with a lot of organisations, I don't know if there's any finance people in the room here at all. Probably not, no. It can be increasingly important to move whatever assets they're holding off of their balance sheet. And we can structure the contracts in such a way that would meet approval by a client's auditors to make sure they are off balance sheet. You're minimising the energy market risk, and outsourcing obviously equals transferring the operating risk to somebody else. And that comes with guarantees, performance guarantees, output guarantees, and anything else that needs to be negotiated. And that helps unlock the value of that energy asset, both in terms of the capacity market and the flexibility markets. So monetizing your asset, I mentioned backup generators earlier, and there's a lot, I'm sure everyone's got them sitting out there in buildings and sites that just aren't being used. And they can be, or give you access, or your clients access to a really valuable income stream in terms of triad avoidance, your short-term operating reserve or store, and using it on the capacity market as well. There's no point in having that asset that you're maintaining just sitting there if it can be working for you and actually making money and providing the revenue. And as a rule of thumb, we've got a separate division within E.ON Connecting Energies. They sit next to us, called virtual power plants, and they can run all these assets for you remotely. So there's not a great deal of physical intervention once the setup's been done. But as a rule of thumb, you can use between £30,000 and £50,000 per megawatt of capacity per year is the revenue you could expect to get from a generating asset that is just sitting there doing nothing at the moment, which is not an inconsiderable sum. Before I just run through who we are, I'll just give you a bit on what else we do. Any questions on that bit at all?
Just a question.
Yeah, certainly.
Existing asset, existing buildings, and the cost of the design and engineering up front before a solution can be put forward is occasionally a barrier to actually putting the solution forward.
Yeah.
Because until you've done all that work, you don't know whether the solution works.
Absolutely.
It's interesting how
What we do with clients is if someone's got an interest, a client's got an interest, we'll have an exploratory meeting first of all. We will ask them for all the energy data they can supply, so the half-hourly reads on gas, electricity, any sub-metering information they've got. Ask them about the state of their asset that they're looking after, the building asset, so what type of lighting, is there anything being planned, are you planning control upgrades, anything else that's being planned, expansions, etc. It's a fairly simple sort of pre-qualification questionnaire we go through and get those answers. Once we've got that information and had a quick walk around the site, and it's literally normally half a day, we'll then put together what we call an outline proposal. That's totally non-binding. We'll do the sort of design work behind that. That's all at our risk. So we'll come in, as long as you can supply the information to us, we'll come in, look at the building, look at the assets, look at how you use your energy, and then come up with a proposal. That proposal, if it's of interest to the client, we'll then put forward an MOU of some description, like a memorandum of understanding. And from that point onwards, we then go into sort of deeper design work. But as part of that MOU, we'll put down in there, from that point onwards, if we deliver a binding proposal in 2-3 months' time that doesn't meet the energy savings or carbon savings we gave you on the outline proposal, within, it's usually a margin of plus or minus 3 or 5%, then you can walk away, no risk, no payment to you. If we do meet those and you walk away, we just look to recover some of our heavy design costs between MOU and binding contract stage. So that upfront part, to give you an idea of whether something will work, is totally at our risk. I think it has to be. We've recognised that. I think a lot of people have spent an awful lot of money with consultants doing 6-month studies, and then they take it out to the market, and you'll go to a contracting organisation, and they'll probably do something a bit different, or the design risk then transfers to the contractor anyway, so it gets changed. There's no point, our view is there's no point in us putting anything forward unless it works and it can save you money. In terms of what we're part of E.ON, I'm just conscious of time now, of the larger E.ON. We're an organisation, a division within it, Connecting Energies, that was established in 2012. We actually go back in the UK further than that, 2007. I think we were the first utility in the country to set up a dedicated sustainable energy section, and that's when I started with E.ON Sustainable Energy in the UK. Since then, it's sort of morphed, it's spread across, and we've been integrated into the wider global organisation. So we've grown from 14 people originally to an organisation, a sector within E.ON of over 600 employees, with offices right across Europe and the Americas and Asia as well. But our primary focus is on Europe. So what that gives us is the opportunity to work with clients that are multi-site and multinational. So if we've got a fix that works with a client in the UK, that's say a fast-moving consumer goods is a prime example where they have sites all across Europe, we can then look at rolling that model out across all their other sites, which does work particularly well. In terms of what we do, we take that complexity, we manage that complexity for clients or client organisations. One of the key things I think that we got is our covenant strength of E.ON, being that sort of large organisation. You can never say no one's ever going to disappear from the marketplace, but sort of contracting organisations are probably more likely to suffer the pressures of changes in the financial markets than perhaps a utility is, which is why, as E.ON being used to building power stations and looking at maybe 20, 30, 40-year payback periods, we've got no problem in funding energy asset replacements for client organisations that maybe have a contract length of 10, 15. We've got some with supermarkets that are 25 years at the moment in the UK. So, you know, it's we're looking for that long-term investment gain. We're not looking for necessarily a short payback, which helps accelerate the ambitions of clients. In terms of our core competencies within Connecting Energies, 3 main divisions. We've got Onsite Generation, that's who I work for, so that's generation of heat, power, cooling and load management on site. We've got our energy efficiency team, that's Matrix, who we acquired and became part of E.ON nearly 2 years ago now, and they manage an awful lot of clients in the UK. I think over 34,000 clients globally. They manage their energy and building management services for them. And then our demand flexibility and virtual power plants. Now, these are the guys that will take assets that you may have or your clients may have and other assets that other clients may have, aggregate them together and then trade them on the market to get maximum benefit. In terms of technologies, we're agnostic, heat pumps, CHPs, energy storage. We'll look at anything. We're not there to push a particular technology or solution. We'll look at the best environmental and financial solution for ourselves and for the client. And in terms of structure, in what we can do commercially, it can be an investment by us. That could be a straightforward lease type arrangement over however many years suits the client. If you want to take it off balance sheet, then we really look at sort of a power or heat purchase or an ESCO type arrangement, and that can be structured to take it off balance sheet. Or if you just want to design and build, or your client wants to design and build with us operating, we can do that as well. Got a mind of its own at the moment. They're just some of the clients that we deal with in UK and Europe. I mean, with M&S, our Matrix division looks after their entire store portfolio across the country and manages everything, you know, down to a 3-port valve operation in a distribution centre somewhere in Scotland, for example. It's that degree of trust that M&S have got with us as a partner managing their energy for them. Any questions at all?
Do you ever get involved in sort of fabric works to obviously reduce things like by improving insulation on new windows on buildings?
We do primarily residentially, not our part of E.ON, but a part of E.ON does. We are actually looking at a sector of the marketplace at the moment, let's call them market gardeners, where we're looking at the greenhouse environment, large commercial greenhouse, and improving ventilation, insulation, heat, CO2 delivery, etc. So what we won't do is sort of rule anything out. If it's something that can fit in with helping a client achieve their ambitions of reducing energy and reducing costs, then if we can't do it directly, we'll have a partner that can. Well, thanks very much for your attention. I appreciate that. Thank you. And if you've got any questions, find us over there later. Thank you.